Hello, welcome to CONDG. Happy April. Happy nicer weather, although it's a little colder this week. That's okay. This month, we are talking about .NET developer productivity with my good friend Sam Basu. So really happy to have him. How long was your drive to get here, Sam?
3 hours.
Okay. So I would suggest that you pay attention when he's talking.
No rushing.
No rushing. Yeah. But thanks for all for coming here. If you don't know about us, well, good job getting here anyway. But you can find us on Meetup under the Central Ohio.NET developer group. We also have Central Ohio.NET, but Google and Squarespace are giving me some weird issues with the redirect there, so I'll try to get that sorted out. But hopefully we'll get that working by our next month. Please device responsibly. We are broadcasting this and streaming this, so don't be playing Quake too much over there in the back, or just conserve your bandwidth while you do so.
Is that for me? Like, that's a Windows phone.
Actually, I added that right when we had Scott Hanselman and Mark Downey presenting remotely, and it was a good way of begging them to bring back Windows Phone.
Can we turn off the lights? Maybe you can see better.
Yeah, that would be helpful. Yeah. So yeah, again, we are on Meetup. We are also on YouTube. Organizing team. Oh yeah, so we meet the fourth Thursdays of the month, not the last Thursday, which is what I often think, but the fourth one. Usually the same, but not always. I get in trouble with that all the time. Organizing team is Alan over there doing the AV streaming and helping us out with improving and hosting and all that good stuff. Myself and Sam Gomez over there. I told myself in January that the next time I was emceeing while Sam was here, I was going to embarrass him because he was awarded the Microsoft MVP award in, what category was that again?
Infrastructure as code.
Infrastructure as code. And I thought, well, he would never tell anybody. He'd be very humble. He wouldn't. Would you stand up and show everyone what you're wearing, Sam? But congratulations to Sam for winning the MVP award. This is our fourth meeting of the year. We have another 5 normal meetings, as well as our lightning talks, which are going to occur in July. So start thinking about lightning talks. That's usually you get 10, 15 minutes to talk about something fun. I might do something on my simulation of One Night Ultimate Werewolf and artificial intelligence and fun stuff like that. But we usually have a lot of fun talks that particular month. If you want to give a talk, if you know somebody who wants to give a talk or can be persuaded into giving a talk, please connect them with us. We are looking for speakers, and we're probably going to start dipping into our subs list, which is the 3 of us. So stay tuned on what's up for next month. We figure that out. We are on YouTube, so you can find not just Sam's talk today, but our past talks as well. We have over 304 subscribers. That's actually old. We probably have more like 306 right now, so we'll see.
311.
Ooh, 311. We're high rolling now. That's what happens when you get the MVP. Yeah, all right. We are on Twitter as well. That's a really good way of getting non-meetup announcements of our events if you want to. And then the less good way of getting announcements is LinkedIn. We don't really use that too much, but it's there in case you wanted to post things in the group and just share .NET news around Columbus. I want to thank our sponsors, Improving, for just giving us a constant place to be, giving us pizza, giving us soft drinks, and not so soft drinks. We appreciate Improving. They're awesome. We also want to thank JetBrain for being our raffle sponsor. So we'll be raffling off a license this month for basically a coupon code to use any one of their tools for free for a year, which is awesome. And then .NET Foundation, they pay our meetup costs to help us be here, be awesome, and keep doing the things that we're doing. Other groups in the area are Columbus JS, tech support, which is not a group about fixing routers and things like that. It's just more of your non-specific technical things that apply to technical people. So I love that group meets here as well. CBus Pass is a data-oriented group, meets around town, and then Columbus Azure is very active as well. In fact, some of you I saw at the Global Day of Azure this last Saturday, which was hosted by them, which was great. There's also a DevOps group that's going to be springing up soon, I hear, as well. So keep your eyes out for that. Okay, new segment for today. I'm going to try this as a little experiment, but We'll call this What's New in .NET. A couple new announcements with .NET Tech. This week, Uno announced version 5.2, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but it's actually kind of a big deal. Uno is a cross-platform way of building desktop, mobile, and web apps. And the big thing that's new with them is that now it's all in a single project instead of you having to do a project for Linux and a project for Apple and a project for Windows and the like. So now it's all in a single unified project. I haven't gotten to play with it yet, but it's a pretty cool announcement. They've been working on that for a while. And that team over there is pretty passionate about what they do. So if you're thinking about mobile development, you like .NET, that's a good option to consider. Sam is very wise in the various aspects of mobile and desktop development. I'm sure he'll talk more about other options as well. Another thing that was new this week is .NET Aspire Preview 6 launched. .NET Aspire is kind of like this prepackaged way of building a large application that's distributed, has all sorts of standard things. So it's sort of like a boilerplate way of making a big application with .NET. So it's exciting. It's fun to look to watch out for. And so I want to play with that one as well. Next week, next Friday, is Stir Trek 2024. I think you can still get tickets, but you'll have to pick up your swag at the event because they mailed it out yesterday, and 2 of us are wearing the swag. And I'm sure that you also washed your shirt as thoroughly as I did. But yeah, Star Trek is over there at Easton. It's 5-6 hours of talks, and you get all sorts of options. It's a lot of fun. It's really good. I think it's 28 total talks that you get to pick from, and then they have a movie showing afterwards. It will be the Star Wars Episode 1, so not the original prequel, but the last prequel. Not the original trilogy, but the last trilogy that they offered there, the prequel trilogy. If you like to speak sometimes, if you are considering speaking or know coworkers who are, let them know that the Momentum call for presentations is starting next month. It'll be open all month. That's down in Cincinnati, and it's in October. So keep an eye out for that. Yeah, it's a good conference. Who's hiring right now? I guess I'm not hiring, but I know people who are hiring. I can't tell you who they are, but I can connect you to them, which is weird. So if you're looking for a .NET job on Azure, come talk with me. Alan, what do you got?
It's a little of everything.
A little of everything?
Yeah, at this point.
Yep. And I saw another hand. Where was it? Yeah, what do you got?
We have some opportunities that are opening up in the next couple of months to do some greenfield work for State of Ohio.
Okay, State of Ohio, improving and leading edge, but actually a client of ours.
I'm with ADS.
Yeah.
Which agency?
State of Ohio. The Treasury Department.
Treasury Department. There we go. Cool. So I forgot to fix this slide again, or I fixed it a long time ago and I broke it again. But feel free to get up, get food and drink, stretch your legs, go to the bathroom. The code for the ladies' room is 5600 star. The code for the men's room is open the handle and push. It just doesn't lock.
Why?
You'd
have to ask improving. They haven't improved the bathroom code yet.
It's not our bathroom.
That's fair. It's a shared bathroom. And do ask questions. That was we didn't want to interrupt Mark and Scott while they were doing their thing last October, and I haven't fixed the slide yet. So apologies on that. I get to introduce my friend Sam Basu. Sam is actually the person responsible for me talking to you all here, and some of you were taught by me, so you can blame him for me. Sam and I go back to 2009 or so with the Central Ohio Windows Phone User Group, or CowPug for short. Yeah, very nice. Sam will be talking about .NET developer productivity, kind of a grab bag of here's how to be more productive as a .NET developer. Come on up, give him a round of applause. He drove a long way to get out here, so thanks, Sam, for coming out. Thank you.
All right, give me a second here, folks, to just switch things up. All right. Way up. All right. All right, can you hear me, Alan? All good? Can you see me? Should I do interpretive dance? Like, I'm not supposed to.
Please do the dance.
I'm apparently not supposed to go off too far in that area because Alan is trying to make me internet famous or infamous. I do stream a lot, so I'm used to failing a lot as well. So the one thing you should know about me is I'm old. I have failed a lot. If you give me a stage which is like elevated like a dais, I've fallen off the stage a few times. I've been doing this for a while. I'm old. But for those of you who don't know, I used to actually live here in Columbus, Ohio for 7-8 years. Wife's a Buckeye. Now she's a college professor over in Pennsylvania. So we moved out of Columbus in 2012. So it's been over a decade now. But I still come down here a lot. It's always fun to see how the town and the city is changing, how much like Eastern area has changed in just the last decade. So always glad to be here and seeing my friends here. All right, so let's talk about .NET. Hi to folks who are online as well. Let's try to understand where you folks are. I think Matt told me that many of you may be coming out of college fresh or new to .NET. Any show of hands? Some of you? Okay, all right. And the rest, I'm guessing, I've at least played around with .NET, used .NET. I've known some of you for years and years as well. All right, so let's dive in. How long do I have, Matt and Sam, before you officially throw darts at me?
The darts, usually around
9, 10.
Yeah.
Depends if we like it or not.
Yeah.
Oh boy. All right, so let's shoot for an hour or so. We'll see. And I mean, I'm happy to digress and talk about whatever questions you have in mind as well. Let's see how far we get. So I'm Sam. I am a dev advocate at Progress Software. Hopefully you have heard about us through some of the things we make to help developers be a little bit more productive. We make lots of UI suites for .NET and JavaScript and Fiddler and Sitefinity. That's mostly us. This is me on most of the socials. Should I get this door, Matt?
If it helps you, it might be a little too hot if you close it, but if it helps you, yeah.
It might help with the audio.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, this is a trip hazard. Yeah, I'm going to stay on this side. Okay, so this is me on most of the socials, X, Mastodon, GitHub, and all the places. Let's talk about .NET. This is going to be an hour of an old man trying to convince you that he still belongs. This is still cool. No, it's all good because it's changed a lot. So for those of you who are new, .NET is at least 25 years old now. The early days of .NET started back in 2002, 2001-ish, when it was just a framework. It's an abstraction over the OS. So you don't have to do hardcore OS level things. It just abstracts all of that out for you. And it's had a long run. It was called .NET Framework back in the days, and that ran for like 15 or so years. And then 2015-ish timeframe, we started opening it up to other platforms as well. So it's not just Windows, it's Mac and Linux as well. For all three of you who run Linux, including one guy in the front here. So it's welcoming to everybody. It's really all open source, no barrier to entry. Let's just understand what are some things modern .NET allows you to do. What are the tools? What are the languages? What's your platform reach? And so on. Okay, so let's try having a little fun. So modern .NET is not your old school .NET that just needs to be running on Windows, needs a giant machine. I mean, if you are still getting started, it might take you an hour or so to get, the latest version of .NET installed and the tooling installed and the workloads installed, but then you're up and running. It works on every machine. Like on Mac and Linux, actually, surprisingly, it's quicker because the workloads and everything else is just, much more slimmer. We'll talk about tools in a bit, but modern .NET lets you reach a huge number of platforms, almost everything that you can think of, iOS, Android, Windows, Mac, IoT, AI, and all the things. We're going to talk about something that nobody in the room has ever heard of, AI. It's like, what is that? We have gone from... No. We have gone from, have you seen the meme with the Chef Bay doing the sprinkling of the salt on everything? Like it started there to that's all that the big tech can talk about, and for good reason. I mean, there's some really interesting improvements being made, so we'll talk about that. But most of your usual platforms, it's all covered. Now, it comes down to what tools you want to like to use, what programming languages. The most mature language that kind of helps you write .NET on top of those abstractions is C#. That's the most popular. VB is also popular amongst all three of people who use it, but it's still there. And so is F# for the all two of you. But C# is the most prominent one. Tools have come a long way. It's not just Visual Studio on Windows, which is still the best possible IDE, very, very rich, but it's a bit of a beast. They have started, splicing things up so you get only the workloads that you need and not everything in the kitchen sink. But for folks who are trying to do things cross-platform, for folks who are just trying to write their code in a browser, for everything else, it's Visual Studio Code, which is lightweight. It's it's not a full IDE. It's a code editor, and it just works everywhere. And especially you pair it with some AI, you get the same benefits almost everywhere. Command line tools have come a long way. It's not just visual tools, although visual tools will turn around and use the command line tools behind the scenes. So we have big OS support, big rich ecosystem, lots of folks making tools on top of .NET, so things have come a long way. These are marketing slides from Microsoft, which I'm sure you may have seen. Lots of momentum, so lots of popularity, no doubt about it. More marketing, which we're going to gloss over. I do have slides just to kind of set the stage, but let's do like 10 minutes max. Then I want to show you as many things as I can. So you get the idea. They have broken up the things that you do with .NET into workloads, so you're not getting confused with things that you are not doing. So there's an Azure workload, there's a cloud workload, there's a web workload, and a mobile and a desktop, and so on. And again, lots of developer productivity tools, language, and then other things. Yeah, question.
When it says that it's best in class, by what measurement? When I tell somebody to stop using Node.js and switch to .NET, how do I do it?
Well, the question is, why is it best in class? What's the class? The class is .NET. So we are best among this.
That's a good class.
That's a good class.
It was a marketing smart.
So we used to have a user group, like Matt said, which started out as a Windows Phone user group. Then we became the Universal Windows user group, because we are universal within Windows. Nothing else matters. But now it's truly every platform. So in terms of benchmarks, if you just want to use .NET as just a backend that's throwing some data at any type of client app, it is really, really fast. It is, quite a few order of magnitudes faster than Node.js in terms of just an API spitting back some data. But that's not the whole picture, because that's not literally what somebody is doing. So you have to look at the whole ecosystem of what are my tools, what are my platforms. So there is no right or wrong answer. If JavaScript or Node.js is what you want to do, that's actually very welcome to work with .NET. But .NET comes with its own ecosystem of desktop apps and mobile apps and cloud native apps and IoT and AI and all those things. So different ecosystems. The good thing is nowadays folks are not getting tied to one thing. You get to mix and match and build your own stack. So you use .NET, the things that are good for you are useful to you. That's the piece you use, and you mix and match with other things. Yeah, but performance is really, really good. Okay, let's talk a little bit about tooling. Visual Studio. This is on Windows. Again, no barrier to entry. It's free for all, community editions, but there are some paid parts of it for enterprises who are paying for support, who are paying for special features and testing utilities. But otherwise, it's free for all. And it is a beast because it does everything under the sun. So debugging, testing, version control, you get the idea. Then comes VS Code. I was at a conference when they launched VS Code, which is actually based on Atom, the code editor. And then it's been like 6-7 years and it's come a long way. It's lightweight, works everywhere, consistent, great experience. They have managed to have that balancing act of giving it enough things so you can be productive, yet not bogging it down with performance issues, right? So you get, there's a big extensions marketplace where you get the things that you need and not the things that you don't need. So it's come a long way as well. VS Code versus Visual Studio, you pick the poison that you want. Visual Studio is for all of you who are on Windows, best possible experience, no doubt about it. VS Code is for that cross-platform experience. In fact, VS Code is a web app. It is simply a web app that runs everywhere. So we'll talk about this a little bit more maybe towards the end. This desire to get web things working on desktop, this is nothing new. We've been doing this for 20 years now. The ways we do it has evolved quite a bit. So Electron is essentially what VS Code is using to bring some web-made things, making it work nicely on desktop, Windows, Mac, or Linux. You can actually use VS Code outside of the VS Code shell. There is something called CodeSpaces, GitHub CodeSpaces, especially if you do GitHub, then you can open up any solution in GitHub in a browser. It has a few runtime pieces. Not everything works, but most things do. So it's a great way to collaborate. Like if you just want to quickly pull up your browser and work on something, push in some code and let your team have it, it's the same experience in a browser. Then there's also something called DevBox. So for enterprises who spend a lot of time trying to customize devices and manage those devices, it takes anybody like a couple of days to get up to speed, to get all the tools needed to work in a team. All of that is now boxed up into one VM called DevBox. It's not free, but it can be very convenient. So as a team lead, you get to configure, this is my GitHub, these are my tools, this is my working conditions, these are the libraries I use, and you set all of that up and then anybody just logs in and they have all of it. So all of that is powered by VS Code. So
Sam?
Yes?
Weren't they working, didn't I hear they were working to take it off of Electron? VS Code?
Not that I have heard of, because it's working out fine for them for now.
I thought I heard that like a year ago.
Yeah, who knows what, because they do actually have some very good options right now. So what he's referring to is, so Electron has been around for a long, long time. It's battle tested, it works. You essentially take some HTML, JavaScript, CSS, bundle it up, and you work it inside of a shell with deep OS integrations. The downside is if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to spike up your memory, because every view can be like a Chrome process, and that can get unmanageable at times. But VS Code is working out fine. But they have some alternatives. They have looked at React Native. They have .NET MAUI. So lots of options. Like Teams used to be that way. Teams is now a fully React Native app. So who knows what the future holds? But it's Electron for now. Bless you. Inside of VS Code, you're using this thing called C# DevKit, which is bringing some of the goodness that you have in Visual Studio so that you can reuse the IntelliSense and the AI-powered tools and all that fun stuff. So you have the same C# writing experience no matter where you are at. So that's a good thing. More things about extensions and how you get that. So essentially you get the C# DevKit. It's going to bring down everything else that it needs with it. Okay, any more questions so far? Yes, Matt.
Your slide, though, what you just skipped over a second ago, it was talking about DevKit is licensed under Visual Studio. I thought they had changed that somewhat recently.
No, it's still the same.
Okay.
So Matt's pointing out to this little thing here. So if you have a community license of Visual Studio, then Visual Studio is free for you on Windows. You are going to need that same license on VS Code. Now that gets into a little bit of a gray area. If you have an enterprise license because you use Visual Studio at work, then you can sign in to VS Code with that same license. So the thing is, there are certain SDK bits that they depend on, especially for cross-platform development, for which they need you to be signed in. So signed in doesn't mean you have to pay. It's still free, but it is tied to the Visual Studio subscription model. So there are certain things which we'll look at that are not free, because they are meant for productivity, because those are not cheap things to pull off. So yeah, it is tied to Visual Studio. Okay, so let's look at three broad things really quickly. So mobile, desktop, and web. broadly what enterprise apps are, and then we'll look at how .NET goes about doing stuff. This is an old slide because nothing really has changed. Broad ways of doing mobile. Remember, it doesn't need to be a mobile app all the time. If you're doing web stuff, keep doing web stuff. You're fine. PWAs are great for distribution through a web. You can have store presence. Monetization gets a little tricky. You can have most of the integrations with platforms, but lots and lots of options for mobile web and PWA. You can use JavaScript or web technologies to write native cross-platform apps for iOS, Android as well. Native, if you want to do this, Windows does not mean Windows Phone. That's been dead many times over. I spent like 4 years on Windows Phone, 2 years on Silverlight. I need lots of hugs, once in a while. But choose whatever stack works for you. Make sure yours. What's that?
How did you keep your hair? Because that got rid of mine.
There's not much left. But if you look at this bottom layer here, this is where you're taking higher level languages and compiling them down to more broader platform reach. So iOS, Android, WebAssembly, if you want to go down that path, this is where Flutter and Uno, they all belong. So .NET is an ecosystem. It doesn't need to be just stuff that's made by Microsoft. People have taken .NET and extended it. So there's Avalonia, there's Uno platform. These are all things that depend on .NET. You're essentially writing .NET code, but you're writing on a platform or a framework that's not maintained by Microsoft. And that's fine, because you're essentially writing .NET. They're all part of the bigger ecosystem. So lots and lots of ways for you to build mobile apps. If you want to do straight up .NET, which is maintained by Microsoft, then this is the thing that they want you to look at. This is called MAUI. MAUI stands for Multi-Platform App UI. The P is silent because MPOWI sounds like you're punching somebody. So they don't want that. So this has come a long way in like 3 years. In addition to, so for those of you who have heard of Xamarin, anyone? Xamarin used to be the cross-platform .NET way for 7-8 years. They had a good run. Now we're adding iOS and Android. We know how to do. Now we're adding Windows and Mac. So desktop and mobile, which immediately gives us a lot more platform reach. Truly shared single code base, which is what Uno platform has gotten to as well. So as a developer, this is good. Truly a single shared code base lets me go everywhere. Good architecture everywhere, and all good things. So we'll look at a lot more of this. Let's talk about desktop. If you're old like me, this is liberating. So many options. But if you're new, like, why are there so many options? Because it's like 20 plus years of evolution, right? Of desktop development on Windows. The top 4 are native Windows stack. Don't let anyone tell you that those things are dead. Based on who you talk to, things are very dead or going very strong. So the reality is somewhere in between. WinForms and WPF. WinForms is 20 years old. WPF is 15 years old. Still going strong. They work on the latest .NETs. So when we looked at .NET, like the big slide, .NET today is at .NET 8 is the production ready version. .NET 9 is cooking. So every year you get a new .NET essentially, right? So it's a pretty aggressive cycle, especially for enterprises who are slow to update their thing. But this is not the old school framework where your IT has to spend like 6 months trying to upgrade everybody. Now it's a folder. You can just blow it away and just package .NET with your app and so on. The other ones are enabled by cross-platform things. If you want to do web stuff, Electron, PWA, Flutter, React, they're all in that same category of reusing things. The last 2 here are enabled by .NET MAUI. We'll talk about Blazor a little bit. So lots and lots of options. Yes, sir?
I know there are some automatic .NET updaters, but how often do you run into problem with backwards compatibility?
Great question. So question is about backwards compatibility. What if I have an older .NET app and I want to move it forward? There is no, well, it depends on, is there a silver spoon? Yes and no. If it's a simple enough app with not a lot of dependencies on things that you're trying to take out of just Windows and make it work everywhere else, there are .NET upgrade assistants, which are both command line and is also Visual Studio built in. So it will do as best a job as it can to move your dependencies over to update the runtime. So the help is there, but the reality is you are also likely, have complex legacy apps to move forward. So some of it comes down to your dependencies. If you just do not have dependencies that are running on the modern .NETs, it's going to be hard. And at some point you have to, decide if you want to break that bridge and move forward, because that dependency is not letting your .NET apps move forward. Because otherwise, like your WPF and WinForms apps, they will move all the way forward to .NET 9. But it depends on how complex is your architecture, how many Windows-specific things that you're using that do not work on Linux or Mac, or do not have a compatibility thing on for the web. So compatibility is always an issue. There is an API analyzer. So it's a little tool that will go through your app to say, here are the APIs and SDKs that you're using that I don't know how to move forward. So that's how you know, and you decide how you want to move. Yep. All right, Mac and Linux, similar stories. We have had ways to reach Mac and Linux individually for a long time. Now let's try to reach them in a cross-platform way. Again, the last two should be giving you more confidence, because now it's coming from .NET. .NET just runs on Linux and Mac just as easily. So lots of choices of building desktop apps. And the thing that we're going to look at is we are in a mode of the web and the native story are coming together nicely. The tools, I mean, this is never an easy thing to do. Anytime, like we developers here, write once and just run it everywhere, we're like, yeah, it's like write once and like suck everywhere. This is as close as it has gotten tooling and framework-wise to having that flexibility of reusing things between web and native. So web is very welcome on desktop. Web apps. How do we write web apps? Well, if you are old like me, you have done ASP.NET or ASP Spaghetti days, which are way back in early 2000s. Things have come a long, long way. ASP.NET today is an open source, modular, cross-platform framework, really, really fast. It's a web app framework. It can also give you APIs, or it can serve up HTML, CSS, JavaScript. However you need it, you can run it completely on the server side. You can run it completely on the client side. So it's there. It's a modern web framework if you are in the .NET space. But again, you might not be doing .NET for all of your modern web. So you might be doing HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and every new SPA framework that comes up every other day. But I mean, these are kind of the well-established ones. I mean, they're opinionated, yes, Angular, React, but they know what they're doing. They're mature enough. So there's actually, I mean, a lot of .NET shops have gone into this mode in the last 10 years. If you had to do a modern SPA web app, you went to Angular or React and you pushed .NET to the back to serve up your API and data. And that's a good mode to operate in. Microsoft doesn't like it too much. They would like it to be all .NET if you can.
They should have kept Silver.
Yeah, but again, JavaScript and .NET, they mix and match fairly well these days. Blazor comes along, I think 2017, 2018 timeframe, because prior to Blazor, .NET, ASP.NET was mostly a server-side story. You had a server that was running your web app and you're shipping HTML, CSS to the client side. But that's not how modern browsers try to work. So Blazor comes along. This was Steve Sanderson, who's one of the distinguished engineers on the ASP.NET team. He wrote Blazor over like a week because they were doing a hackathon and it just blew everybody's mind. So this is the first time we see C# working front and back. So C# in the front, on the client side, as well as C# in the server. So it is truly the same .NET code running on the client side with your browser, as well as on the server side. The browser stuff is enabled by this thing called WebAssembly, which is the web standard. Thankfully, nobody owns it. It is a web standard, just the way JavaScript is, quote unquote, compiled and run by the JavaScript engines in your browser. Browsers can also compile down your higher level languages like C# and Rust and F# into lower level things that can be run almost natively. So performance is good, and that immediately opens up .NET to run on the client side. So a couple of modes in which Blazor can operate. It can still be server side, or it can be completely client side. But Blazor is not just for the web anymore. You take PWA, it will very happily be a PWA. You take Electron, it will happily be run on desktop, and you take .NET MAUI, it will happily run on iOS or Android. So lots of flexibilities, because most enterprise teams are not just doing one app. So if you have a team that's doing web app, might as well reuse some of their assets, their styles, their CSS, or their Blazor components or Angular components. They all work with .NET. So a lot of good things. Okay, 6:35. Let's do another 2 minutes and then we'll switch over. PWAs, again, this is a tried and tested thing. If you want to have your web apps work nicely on desktop, on mobile devices, this is your great choice. It can be reliable. It can have offline. It can have fast scrolling and responsiveness. All of that is good, and it just works. A lot of help. Electron is good for desktop. Electron is not good for mobile because it is a Node.js thing. So we'll talk about this a little bit more, maybe in a demo, because Electron and .NET MAUI do the same thing in very different ways. Electron says, oh, it looks like you have a web app. Let me bring in Node.js. Let me ship a Chromium browser instance inside of your app so you can run this on desktop. MAUI says, oh, you already have a modern browser. Let me just borrow that. And I'm not a Node.js app. So there is a difference in how things are bootstrapped, how heavy the apps get. But this works. Your Slack, your Figma, those are all Electron apps and VS Code, of course. This is Blazor Hybrid, which is essentially bringing Blazor and Angular and React and Vue, all of that inside of .NET, and everything web-wise just works inside of .NET. More Microsoft slides, because they're trying to show you that you have reach, or you can have depth, or you can have mix and match of the two things. This is kind of Blazor Hybrid. We'll talk about this a little bit more. I'll show you some of this, how this works. You can actually reuse the same web UI on the web and the same styles, the same routing on desktop and mobile as well. So this story is really nicely flushed out. And it's getting better. I can do this today where I can have an Angular or a React app running nicely on my iOS or on my Android device. The tooling and the frameworks can do a little better. That's what they're working on for .NET 9 and beyond. The goal is, whatever you have had in the past, that is UWP, by the way. That's universal within Windows. But if you have Xamarin, if you have WPF or WinForms, all of those apps can move forward nicely. For enterprises, it's a big deal to just drop an app and just rewrite it. All of these fancy things we look at, it's hard because when you go back to work, you are stuck with an older app that has a lot of features and it's hard to maintain, but it's making you a lot of money. So it's hard to move off it. So let's take bite-sized pieces. So hopefully, these two things, this is MAUI and that's Blazor. These are the two pillars of innovation in modern .NET. So that's what we'll talk about. We'll talk about Aspire. Maybe we won't have time to talk about Aspire, but it's fun.
It's fun.
Aspire is like Kubernetes. So no one can explain it completely, but it's the glue. It's the orchestration to run all of your cloud native apps, your web apps and your native apps and everything together. Things are coming along nicely. Containers. So we'll kind of start with the basics of .NET really quickly and then get up to Blazor and MAUI. Containers is when somebody says, works on my machine, I'm happy I can ship my code, right? But what if your machine was really big and you could invite everybody else to run things on your machine where things are isolated? So that's the idea of containers. We'll look at Docker a little bit because things have come a long way, especially with Canonical. They have done quite some nice things with Ubuntu in .NET 8, so things are nice. AI. We got to talk about AI to be cool, right? And .NET enables a lot of AI. Okay, so here's the thing. There's a guy named Mustafa Saeed, I think. He's a Turkish guy. He is in charge of all of AI at Microsoft, and he did a TED Talk, which I encourage you guys to watch. Like, this is all big tech can talk about, and then there is a lot of value in what they're doing. Nothing is new. This thing we call generative AI, it's a small part of what is artificial intelligence, and we have been working on this for the last 50 years. What is new is the models that give us the answers that we want and the amount of computation we are throwing at it. It is insane what they can pull off. And maybe, it's solving climate change or diagnosing cancer cells. I'm all for it. But we are asking it to create a kitten riding a motorcycle picture. And that's fine. That's fine. It's actually very expensive to just pull off that. We were in a presentation where Scott Guthrie, who's the VP of all things cloud and AI at Microsoft, he was showing us how much it takes to run one Azure data center in Dublin, in Ireland. It's like 4 miles long. And the amount of GPU and the amount of heating that they have to figure out, they have like underground cables coming in from the ocean to cool things down. This is an insane amount of computing to pull off what modern AI is. And yeah, it's amazing. We just need to figure out how to use it right. There are lots of ethical things, concerns as well. So let capitalism and let humanity battle it out. What we're going to talk about is what this means for us, like as a developer. Maybe you have heard about AI, maybe you're sold, maybe you're not sold. what does it mean for you to be a little bit more productive, and what part of this can you ship to your users to be a little bit more productive using your stuff. So that's the thing we'll look at. Bing CoPilot, all of that is baked in. We'll look at some ChatGPT stuff and GitHub CoPilot. This is really fun. All right, productivity, my shameless things. We build a lot of UI. So if you're building any type of .NET app, please do not rediscover the wheel. There's a lot of it, not just us. Competition is good, so everyone is making lots of UI for Windows or desktop and mobile and web. So get the UI so you're not creating things from scratch. Same with JavaScript. We make a lot of JavaScript UI as well. Yeah, it's about 20 minutes. Any more questions? We'll dive into stuff and you're going to see me fail. Any more broad questions? Are we good? All awake? All right. Let's look at stuff. All right. So if you are brand new to .NET, this is where you can start. .NET, and it's going to give you everything. The runtime, the tools, and everything that you need to get started with .NET. Now, let's show you a little bit of what .NET is. Let's back it up. Okay, so this is command line. The single thing that, the lowest common denominator between Windows, Mac, and Linux, right? So if I do a .NET, show me the version of .NET I'm running, it should come back to say, hey, you're running .NET 8, right? If I do a .NET, show me a list of all my SDKs, then you get to see all of my .NETs. I got stuff from 6. I had .NET 9, a few versions of it. I've taken it out. But keep in mind, that folder is where .NET lives. It is not a part of Windows, like a system-wide installation. I have blown away .NET and gotten .NET many times over, and so can you. You can bundle .NET with your apps, so this thing is really portable. It's not a big deal anymore. It's just a runtime that's really slim, and when you ship your apps, they are very careful to do some tree shaking. So your app only has the parts of .NET that it absolutely needs and no more, right? So this is modern .NET, and all of the same, all of the tooling that you're going to see from Visual Studio is essentially going to use that same runtime. So if I do a .NET new, like I'm starting up a new type of app, so if I do a list here, this is going to show you, this looks a little weird with the resolution, but these are all the templates. These are the same templates that Visual Studio, when you do a file new, these are the same templates Visual Studio gets you, right? So take a look at the choices here. You got MAUI apps for cross-platform. You got iOS, Android. Those are not gone. Those are very much part of .NET. You got ASP.NET. You got Avalonia, Blazor Server, cross-platform, iOS, Mac Catalyst. Mac Catalyst is the Apple-approved way of bringing your iPad apps to the Mac desktop. Everybody wants to write for iOS. Nobody wants to write for the Mac desktop store, which is a niche audience. So Apple wants to get your iPad apps to run on the Mac, and that's the same bridge that .NET is using to get you on the Mac as well. So lots and lots of types of apps that you can build with modern .NET, right? Let's start. Let's look at some stuff here. So I'm going to be on mostly on VS Code. I do run, I will show you a VM where I run Windows as well. So this is also my heater at work. When I run VMs, I don't need to turn on heat in winter time. I do have a big, Windows box under my desk. But let's look at some .NET stuff here. So let's start with which one shall we start with? Let's do this one here. It's kind of fun to look at. Let's get the small things out of the way. This is way too small. All right. So this is VS Code if you have not used this. For those of you who are too used to the Visual Studio on Windows type of thing, you can actually get this thing called the Solution Explorer, which will kind of look like Visual Studio on Windows. It knows your .NET files a little bit better, but otherwise it's the same thing. These are the extensions, and these are the extensions that I always recommend that you look into. The MAUI is a C# extension; those are nice and done. But this one is my favorite, the Material Icon theme. This one gives you an icon for every type of file that you might have in your .NET project. Really, really nice. We make tools as well, but you get the idea. We'll talk about GitHub in a second here. But let's start with the basics of .NET. So here's a .NET Hello World thing. It's a console app, nothing else to it. So this one here, we are just saying, hey, .NET runtime, I need you to write a Hello World app. Friends don't let friends render things in Comic Sans, so I'm bringing in just a a CS project dependency here called Figgle, which is actually just it's a font. And then I want to render hello world, and then I want to do a little counter. So I want to count every second and then just print out what that thing is, right? That's about it. So let's go ahead and run this. I was not here, so let's go to, where was that? Here, .NET deploy, let's do new terminal. And you don't need to actually do this, because I was just trying to show you. I can just do a terminal right here. It's built in, right? So I can just do a .NET. No, let me show you this in a terminal, because it looks better. Because for the next things that I'm about to do. So if I do a .NET run, no, not that. I need to go inside the app. All right, now let's do a .NET run. So .NET run essentially says go run the app, right? So you get hello world, which is my fancy font, and you get the counter, right? So .NET, when you say .NET new, it news up a new project for you. When you say .NET restore, it grabs all of the dependencies, puts them in your folder. Unlike NPM, which is bringing down half the internet on your hard drive, this is a little bit slimmer. But then you say .NET run, and it keeps going, right? So this sends a counter. It's going to keep on going until I say stop, and then it stops. So just a hello world.NET, one line of code to print out a counter, right? You get the idea. So this is a run, and it's running it in debug mode. I can do a publish, and I can say publish this in self-contained mode. So it's going to include all of the .NET that I want. But let's do a little better than that. So in here, there are a couple of things. One thing I'm bringing in is this file here. And before I do that, let's fire up something that I'm going to need in a minute. Docker. Anybody do Docker? Okay, some of you. All right, there you go. I'll tell you what this is in just a second. But let's go back here. So in this hello world.NET thing, I'm dropping a file here called Docker file. .NET, it's one way to build your app and then deploy it and have it running. How do you deploy it depends on a lot of things. If it's a desktop app, you want to have that click install on all of your users' desktops. If it's a web app, then you have to have a web server that's hosting it and running it, maybe on the server side, maybe on the client side. If it's a mobile app, you can still do enterprise distribution through Apple or through Google, or you can go straight to the stores. So multiple ways in which your apps can run. But one of the common ways is using a container, which is essentially running on my machine, but it's isolated. It's good for microservices, but good for any type of app as well. So a Docker file, Docker is the most commonly used container registry and ways to host your app. A Docker file is essentially where, like, I'm having a sad birthday. Nobody wants to come to my birthday. I'm by myself. I'm making a list of things that I need to go to the grocery store to buy so I can bake myself a cake. That's called a Docker file. This is essentially just a list of things. So this one's, what's that?
That got dark.
That got dark. I'll get better. I'll get better. So this one's just saying, hey, go grab these things from that Microsoft registry, go and do a restore, and then copy. This is where you can find my app. Then I can go to the store and build up something called an image, which is essentially a recipe. Like, how am I going to build that cake? And a container is essentially my cake that I'm going to enjoy. Well, the night before, Matt calls and says, I want to participate in your birthday. Send me the recipe so I can bake you a cake as well. So an image is something I can make many number of containers with. And then I have too much of cake, and then I can stop a container, which is like putting a cake in a freezer so I can enjoy it later on. Make sense? So how do I use this stuff? Let's look at this. In here, you will see that I have an image here that's called counter image, which is something that I have built reading the Docker file. Oh, and I should pull up this thing because I'm old and I cannot remember stuff. So this is my $1 million cheat sheet because I cannot remember all the commands. All right, so now I can remember. So I've done a Docker build using that, right? If I look at my Docker images, it's going to show me the same image that is running in here. Let's do a clear. I'm getting to this for a reason that I'll show you. So that's my image, right? That's my recipe. Now with that image, I can actually go ahead and create a new container, which is my cake, to say, go read that recipe and build me a container. It comes back with a GUID to say, here's your cake, right? And if I go look at Docker here, It didn't have anything yet, and now it says, hey, I'm a container, you have just created me, I'm not running yet, right? So I can actually start this thing now. So that is starting this Docker container like that, and we can fire it up, and it's off and running, except I'm not seeing any of the inputs because it's running in its own virtual machine type thing. It's the abstraction that Docker provides. So it's running, but I don't know if my app is running because I'm not actually looking at it. So this is the way for me to attach myself to that container to actually see the inputs or the outputs of my app. So now it's already up at 20, 21, and then so on. So the app was running because it was in a container until I stopped it, until I went into it. And I can pause here, which means it's still not done. I can reattach. So if I go back here, now it's at 35, right? So it's running, and this is a container. You can move it to, yes, Linux or anywhere else. Yeah, question?
So when you start a Docker container in detached mode, is that what you're doing with the attached? You're attaching to the detached?
Yeah. The container is running. I'm just not looking at it, essentially, right? So, oops, there we go. So there is a way in which I can actually, let's go in here. I can kill this container. Well, let me stop it first, and I can just kill this container. And then there is a shortcut way of doing this, which I did not know, which is Docker run. This essentially creates a container for however long you need, and then it gets rid of it. Let's go back here. What's my image name? So the counter image is the same app that I showed you, right? So that's that. So now it will spin up a new container, and it's running, and it'll give it a GUID because I never asked for the name. So trusting doorbells. So that's just the GUID it gives you, and it's running. But here, when I stop the app, the container goes away because Docker run just creates an instance of it and shuts it down when you're done with it, right?
Looks like it attaches too, right?
It does attach, because I mean that was the command, like start and then look at it, which was
Or you're already
Docker run.
attached somehow.
What's that?
You weren't already attached because
If I do if I do a Docker start, then it's not attached by default. But Docker run automatically does
Does it all?
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
actually that RM flag that fills in afterwards.
Right, exactly.
Sticks around.
Exactly.
It's important, otherwise you down flow.
Yep. Now, here's the thing I wanted to show you. All of this has been around for the last 10 years. But if I look at the image here, take a look at this. This is the counter image, which is just a hello world with the counter, right? Take a look at this size. That's not nice. That's not nice. This is a hello world.NET app, and it should only have the things about .NET that you only need. So I want a vegan cake. I want a gluten-free cake. I don't want any of this, right? So this is new in .NET 8. So in my app, there is another thing here where I'm saying, hey, I want a trimmed, I want a trimmed thing, and give me Jammy. You know what Jammy is? It's the latest version of Ubuntu. So I'm saying, I don't care about Windows or anything else, or Mac, just give me an Ubuntu container where I only get my gluten-free cake, right? And with that, I can do so with just a MS build. So that is a .NET publish here, which is essentially doing an MS build. So I'm going to say publish container with that chiseled tag, and I care for only Linux ARM64, right? So let's go back in here, and let's fire this up. And it's going to do a build. Oh, yeah, where am I exactly? Let's go one up, maybe. Yep, now I went too far down. What was it called? .NET deploy, yeah, and let's do this guy again. Bless you. So this is what's new in .NET 8, and I need to probably do a clearing of my cache. Yeah, I don't know. Demo gods, I didn't pray. What I was trying to show you was this thing called chiseled containers. Not those containers. So this is Richlander who works on the containers with .NET. So this same image, I can create another container or another image which is about 17 megabytes as compared to 242. So if my IL or my task would work, MS Build will work. So that's a huge improvement, and they're working on it to make it more more cacheable and so on. But again, if containers is what you want to do, just look around. There's a lot of improvements being done in .NET 8 as well as continuing in .NET 9. Make sense? Yeah.
What was the from on that one pointing to that made it so big? Was it Linux 2 and this was a fat one, or is it,
this is the standard one that you get when you choose to go get the runtime from this MCR, which is the Microsoft Container Registry, because you're essentially getting an ASP.NET. Even though it's a console app, you're kind of getting the ASP.NET runtime. So the chiseled one's essentially saying, just get rid of all the fat. Just, I'm going to get you some of the runtime bootstrapping things that you need. So it's just bare bones of what .NET that you need. So they're able to just trim some fat out. Make sense? Yeah. All right. Let's switch gears to Matt's best Matt's topic here, AI. Matt, by the way, is your AI authority, the best one in Midwest. I don't know how many degrees and certifications he has. He spends all his time with AI. All right, let's look at.
Matt's replaced by an AI.
Yeah, you never know. You never know. What is AI? Speaking of not knowing, hold on. Let me close this, and I'm going to quit Docker. Okay, have you folks looked at this thing called Sora? Forget text, forget images. This is video generated by AI. There was one, hold on, there was one, this is like an old gold rush in the West.
I've heard a bit about how computationally intensive it is.
Take a look at this. How is this not an actual video of a camera following an SUV on a mountainous road?
Because they're driving well. If they were driving poorly, then you know it's real.
So this is insane, and you cannot make out what is deep fake versus what is real anymore, because they are like you look at somebody for whom you have a lot of video, like you do a Biden and a Trump thing. They have hours and hours of video. You cannot make out what is real, what is not. So it is insane, the amount of computing and what they can pull off. But let's look at what this means for us, shall we? So there is this thing called.
Somebody got sent to prison today, I heard on the news, for impersonating somebody.
The laws of the land have not caught up to this stuff. This is too much. What am I showing you? Where is it? Where is the starting point? Where is my GitHub CoPilot? I'm going to have to type this in. Maybe here? Okay. World's widely adopted AI development tool. There are other companies who do stuff like this. This is for all of your .NET. As the name suggests, it's a co-pilot. You are still the pilot. This is for your productivity. There are certain things that it can do very, very well, and there are certain things that it will completely fail on. Your experience depends on what you give it, because you are the pilot, right? So this, there are times where you've configured this right with your code base, and you figure out where it's learning and how so. It is remarkable what it suggests. Like, it's unbelievably good, but then also there are things that it fails, because it's not a thing that's going to compile your code. It's just trying to suggest. So where AI has come, what's different about AI nowadays is large language models. We're actually switching to small language models as well, but the large language models are the ones who can just have vast amount of computing resources. They can learn from anything that's out in the open. And when you ask something, it tries to find those patterns and give you something that hopefully is the thing that you're asking for. A couple of key things to keep in mind. It is trained on something that is fixed in time. So if you ask it, like, what happened with news today, it doesn't know. It's going to go and scrape off some websites. It's not going to be very smart. For it to actually have deep contextual knowledge, the model needs to be trained, and that model will be trained on a given day. And beyond that, it will not know. It doesn't learn by itself until you give it more prompts and more things to learn. And Matt can talk all about it. it is also non-deterministic, which means if you give it the same exact inputs, it might not come back with the same output, because that's the nature of it. It's trying to give you a probabilistic way of what it thinks should be the right thing, and you can help out a little bit in how this works. So, is this free? No, because it takes a lot of computation to pull this off. You might get to a point where your enterprise says, yes, we are signing up to get everybody GitHub CoPilot. Yay! Otherwise, it's about $9 a month, and you can turn it off if you don't need it. So, yeah. All of this can be on your own account or on your Visual Studio account as well. But let me show you what this does. So this is enabled by this extension here, which is the same thing. Did you have a question? Yeah.
Yeah. Remember that Copilot was previously $20 a month. I also remember that Azure was losing about $20 a month per subscription because of compute costs. So, and then they upgraded to GPT-4. So are they just burning $100 a month per subscription, or they somehow made it a lot cheaper?
I'm not the Microsoft CEO to answer that question, okay, so we don't know. But
and if we did know, we couldn't tell you.
That's right.
So when we ask for a kitten riding a motorcycle, that is not a cheap thing. It's using a model like DALL-E behind the scenes. Copilot is using GPT-4 from OpenAI as of now. But there are a lot more things, like I'm very interested in what Matt has to say with semantic kernel. That's what they are using to be the middle person in between GPT-4 and your code. Are they losing money? I don't know. But it's all early days, and the productivity gains may warrant more investments from enterprises. But the cost has definitely come down, even from like 6 7 months back. So once this is enabled, it can look at stuff. So a couple of things that it needs from you. Right now, Copilot does not have the ability or the performance to look at all of your 100,000 files in your solution. It cannot do that. So the more files you have open, it can at least understand the file name and the context of what you're doing. It is also dependent on your comments a little bit, right? The more you comment your code, hopefully you've done that over the years.
What's that?
Yeah, we don't do that too much, like this one here, but I'm not doing it. But the more you comment, the better it is. Also, when you're starting to type, if you say, give me a function that says do stuff, you'll be like, what stuff do you want? I don't know. But the more explicit you get, the better it gets. So here's a very simple, Poco C# athlete class, right? Athletes with IDs, string first name, last name. I have Copilot on. So I can just come down here and I can say, comma, dat. And you see that ghost text, it's almost like gray. That's Copilot. I haven't typed anything yet. I can just hit tab to say, yeah, that's fine, LeBron James, that's good. Comma, come down again. Give me more, Roger Federer, sure. I accept that. Tab, give me Usain Bolt, and it will keep on going, right? So you understand that. So each one of those, that's ghost text, that's a suggestion from Copilot to say, do you accept this? And you as the developer has the option of accepting it, rejecting it, or improving on it. So you can say, no, not quite right, and then you can iterate on that a lot more. So how did it do that? Because it has the context of the athlete class. So I can select the stuff that it generated, whoops, right down here, and I can right click and I can say Copilot, explain this, or that's going to pull up the Copilot chat here. So this can be inline, or it's going to say, hey, this is the reason why I gave you those athletes, because you had a class. So it can explain your code and try to, it's going on and on about how it did so. But it can also be something where I come in here, I think it's like Command I, and then I can do explain or write me some tests and things like that. So it's very, very good at certain things. Let's say I want to write, it's already starting to give me a query. I just hit enter, I didn't even say anything. So if I say, let's do a private void filter, there you see, I didn't type anything else, filter athletes by sport, and I can just hit tab if I'm okay with it. It's not the best, but it's getting there, right? And if I do this again, let's just get rid of it. And if I say, I'm writing a comment, function to filter athletes by sport, yep, tab, and then enter that. Here's my list of things by sport. So you can accept, you can see it's not the same response every single time, but it's here to help you. Yeah, Matt.
So right before ChatGPT came out, we got GPT-3, and that was kind of a big deal, but it wasn't mass popular, right? I had to step away from my desk at one point because it completed Visual Studio completed a joke that I was making.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is this?
If you have it configured right, it can be insanely good. Like I was doing stuff in a project where I had dependency injection and I was bringing things into a constructor, and it gave me stuff exactly like a huge chunk of code just done and just dropped it in.
But today it gave me somebody's Google Analytics ID that was not mine. It's like, all right.
Okay, how is it doing this? Large language model. It is a GPT-4. It's a custom one with some semantic kernel on top, with all of Visual Studio's tooling on top, and you can customize this. You can say, do not look at any open GitHub repo. It's not going to be very good, but it's going to only learn from stuff. And this is something that a lot of enterprises are grappling with. Like, should I let my IP get outside of my company? For certain government organizations, that's not an option at all. It's fine. It'll still learn from your own code base. Maybe your team lead comes in and sets up certain parameters on how variables need to be defined, and then you can borrow off that and go off that. But it is really good when you let it go look at GitHub repositories, any and all GitHub repositories. And then you also have the option of saying, my prompts, should they be going back to GitHub or CoPilot? It can be all behind your firewall if you wanted to. Some of this, they're working out the pricing on this. Did you have a question?
That's what my question was about. You were saying about the data bringing in. I was about asking about the data coming out.
Yeah, so let me see if I can pull this up. What is the GitHub settings page? This one here, yeah. So in here, this is something new. Suggestions make public code. Allow GitHub to my code snippets from the code editor for product improvements. So this is your code going outside your org. If you don't want it, turn it off. And this is not enough though, because a lot of sensitive work needs more close guarded things. So they're working on it. So give it a little bit more time. They are trying to work with enterprises and NASA and everybody else to make this work. Yes, sir.
Do you know if that defaults to checked? Did you have to initially uncheck it?
It does.
I don't know. Yeah,
it does.
It does. Yeah.
It did anyway.
Now the tyranny of the.
So yeah, come down here and turn it off.
If you do GitHub Enterprise, you can mandate that org-wide.
Right, that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is individually.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's gonna.
And it takes about 30 minutes to propagate too. So.
Yes. I can do this here. Hold on. Where is it? If I do, Command I. There we go. Doc. Do not ever have an excuse for not writing docs for your things. Because it can do that for you. Look at that. Except now my little file became so much. All of my things, every method has a summary. Everything has an in and an out. Everything is documented, just like that, right?
And you proofed it all.
So, whether you use it or not, it's up to you. Take bite-sized pieces if you want, and use it to your end. Yes.
Have you started using the app workspace command yet? So you were saying that. So you said that CoPilot doesn't read all of your code.
Yeah.
But it can.
It can.
So if you do app workspace, it embeds your entire code base.
Interesting.
And then searches it, so it doesn't read the whole code base, but it uses retrieval augmented generation of the parts of your code base that's related to your query.
Okay.
So it can search the whole code base and read the relevant chunks. And it's scary good. So
it is scary.
You can walk into an enterprise system that you've never seen before and say, where does the session update in the database? And it gives you this file, this file, this file, all the way through. It's crazy.
All right. So, early days, use it however much or however little you want. It's up there. The other thing is, let me see if I can pull up anything in my repos. I don't do a whole lot of open work because we build components, but I can go in here. Where are my repos? Hold on. If I go into any of mine, let's look at this one here. I can download this, or I can do CodeSpaces and create a CodeSpace on main. This is the same VS Code experience that I would have not on my desktop now. It's just in my browser, and I can have the same CoPilot. I can have everything same, all my dependencies, everything just in a browser. Does everything work? No. If you do a .NET MAUI app, it's going to be like, I don't know where to deploy this because it's a native app. I don't have it. But for the most part, code completions and just quick edits, all of it is in your browser because it's the same exact interface as VS Code is using.
How is this stored? Because there's got to be some sort of resource. Are they just stored on GitHub?
Store for CodeSpaces?
Like, let's say we install an extension.
Yeah. Where does it go?
Yes.
It goes in the instance of the CodeSpace that you're in, and you can actually save that CodeSpace with a GUID. So they will host it for you, but it's not something that lives permanently unless you bring it down to your existing, or unless you push from that instance into your GitHub repo, then it's permanent.
Okay.
Then you can put it up everywhere else. Yeah. So again, these are just all options for you to be more creative if you want it. So same projects, you can pull it up in CodeSpaces, and DevBox is another option. All right, any more questions on this? Yeah. All right, let's navigate out of this and on to other things. Sure or no? Let's look at some more things here. Where can we go? Let's look at some web stuff, some mobile stuff. How about 7:30? How about I do 7:30? That good? 19 more minutes. All right. So let's look at some stuff here that's relatively new. Let's do this. So this is a Blazor app. So I went .NET new, give me a new Blazor app, and it's meant to be WebAssembly with a little bit of a server backend. But I'm trying to show you something else here. So in here, if I look at my CS proj, I am bringing in certain new things. So all of this AI is promising, but you're not quite sure what this means for you. You're just trying to do a little bit for your user to make them a little bit more productive. So this is still an experiment, so don't go do this on production. But these are certain new NuGet packages called Smart Components. .NET Smart Components, they work on Blazor, MVC, Razor pages. They will eventually have this working on WinForms and WPF and MAUI and all the other places, because it's the same idea. The UI can just be switched out. So what's in it? So if I just bring that in, what happens? So let's go to home.razor, and this is just a Razor syntax. It's HTML-like, but with some special components that are Blazor. So I'm putting in a text area and I'm putting in a combo box, right? So let's go run this thing, and I'll show you what this tries to do. So if I do a .NET run here, it should build. It's running localhost 5046. What is that noise?
Your laptop. That's the.
It's working hard.
That's working hard.
How many VMs are on it?
It's dark, maybe.
Okay, so this is my Blazor app. For anybody who does Blazor, this is Hello World Blazor, but the UI is a little different. This is a giant text area that is trying to help your user enter some text, and we want to help them out, right? So the only thing I've given them is, I bring this down here, the only context I've given it is smart text of, what that's my, ghost text, or that's my starting text. And I've given it a role that I'm a user who's trying to plan a vacation. Think about it where it's like your IT admin, or you're the GitHub source maintainer and you're trying to accept pull requests. What is the context for your user trying to type something? You're just trying to help. Here, I'm just trying to plan a vacation. So here, I can start typing. Plan, maybe trip to the beach. Yeah, okay. Let's just do vacation to somewhere. Hawaii sounds perfect. That's CoPilot, right? Or OpenAI in this case, right? It's coming through OpenAI. All we did was a smart component to say, this is me. I'm just trying to plan a vacation. You can add on to it with your own tone to say, yo, do you want to go somewhere? Like, you can add some language, you can add more. The more context you add, the smarter it gets, right? This one here is a drop down, right? And whenever anybody is typing in a drop down, we are used to the experience of, as they start typing, you get the match, either like the first few characters or like contains type match. This one's a little different. So here, if I do a sand, it says, did you mean beach? Like, what type of vacation? So it's a smarter combo box that can interpret, trying to see what the user is typing. So if I do food, it says all inclusive. Yeah, maybe.
Does it understand typos?
No. Well, it tries to. It tries to. Trail.
How did you add the smarts to it? That it's able to.
Well, it is very unsmart because I'll show you what this does. But
Is there a namespace you run in?
you can give it a lot more things, but this one's just running local actually. So you get the idea. What it's doing is what's called local embedding. So here is the combo box, and it's just using a mapping of an API here. So if I go look at the API, this is the app setting JSON. By the way, that's my API key. Don't copy it down. But if you do, I'll change it. There's a cap on it.
You are on YouTube. Just
I'm on YouTube, but I'll change it. It's fine. It's got a cap for like $5, so go spend my $5. I'm happy. In here is the mapping that says, hey, Smart Combo Box is routed to this vacation categories. Here's what we are giving it: beach, ski, cruise, that, and that. These are my options. But where it tries to map is the thing that's brought in by this thing called local embedder. Let me show you the actual thing, which will make more sense. .NET Smart Components. This is Dan Roth, and this is the Steve Sanderson guy who is behind. So they have this thing called Smart Paste. So how many times do you have your users, non-technical users, trying to copy an address and trying to paste it in your CMS or your CRM? It can actually do a very smart job of figuring out where things go. This is the smart text area. So you're trying to respond as an HR person. I don't think it's running. You can kind of see this running. This is the same Smart Combo Box. So if I go look at what they're doing behind the scenes, let's look at getting started, local embeddings. So this is what they're pulling off. And some of it is actually running locally. It doesn't need to make an OpenAI call because it's not even GPU intensive. It's just, a little bit of stuff here. Yeah. So when you give it like, example here, when you give it like these games and you say, what is closest to a ball game? It comes back with a vector. So it's trying to parse your natural language into tokens and trying to vectorize them to say what two things are the closest. And it doesn't do it by magic. Yes, you can go to OpenAI and ask for it, but here it's actually downloading this thing called, what's it called, Matt? Help me out. Onyx? It's using something like this Onyx runtime. So it is downloading a tiny model to pull off what it is, and it doesn't have any context whatsoever. The more you feed it, the more tokens you give it, the better and better it gets, right? So just to get started, this is a little bit of AI that you can sprinkle in your apps to try to make them a little better, right? Make sense? And this will show up in a lot more places. This is just, very early days. Let's go a little bit on a different tangent. Is my thing still running? Yeah, let's close that. Right down here. Close it. There we go. Let's say you actually want to go off and talk to ChatGPT. You can do that. You don't need any of the smarts of machine learning or deep neural networks because we can just do APIs. It's just an API call. So let's see if I can go to, where is that? This one. MAUI with GPT, right? As one does. So this, by the way, is a .NET MAUI app. This is truly cross-platform. So as compared to Xamarin or even like Uno platform up until a while back, you don't have 6 different projects. It's all a single project, and every platform that you target is just a folder: iOS, Android, Mac, Catalyst. Anyone know what Tizen is? That's your Samsung fridge.
Is that for Samsung?
Yeah. So you can run .NET MAUI apps on your fridge, as one does, or Windows. So anything that's platform dependent goes in those folders. There's a lot of uncanny valley with AI, as we know. But everything that's platform specific goes in there, but everything that is to be shared is truly shared. And this is a big deal. Your app icons, your styles, your fonts, all of your images, it's all shared between iOS, Android, Windows, Mac, and Tizen. Behind the scenes, they're trying to do as best as they can. It fails at times, to be honest. But you give it an SVG, it's going to try to figure out the right dimensions for the images and the splash screens that are needed for iOS, Android, Windows, Mac, and so on. But if you wanted to do some smart things, it doesn't take much at all. So this is going to run on my Mac. That's fine. Let's go ahead and run this, sure, with the debugger. So out will come a .NET MAUI Mac desktop application, but it's going to run the same on iOS or Android as well. This one's going to call into ChatGPT, because that's what we need to do to be cool these days, right? It's building. Maybe it's coming. All right, so desktop app, you're trying to plan a vacation. We're going to say Columbus, Ohio. Looks like I may have done that before. So I'm going to fire up these two calls. It's all async. It's going to go off to ChatGPT, and it may or may not come back with the right things, but I'm asking, like, what are some things to see in Columbus? Where can I stay in Columbus? Yeah, it's pretty on point, right? Yeah. So this is literally me going to a browser and firing off a ChatGPT call. You can integrate that, all of that, inside of your .NET apps if you want, because all of this is powered by just a RESTful API. So in my, where is it? Where's my CS project? Let's look at platforms. We looked at Mac Catalyst. No, I'm trying to show you the dependencies here. There is CS Proj. In here is ChatGPT.net. And in here, you're going to set this up to accept your API key. And in here is also your opportunity to say which model you want to use, how many tokens you want to use. There's this concept of temperature. When you're talking to AI models, temperature of 0 means I want to be kind of comfortable with your answers. Don't go all crazy on me. It's still not deterministic, but temperature of 1 means go read Reddit comments. Give me all the crap. Because you're asking for it. So you can set up your OpenAI calls and then fire off. So you can do all of that, right? Okay, 9 minutes left. Let's switch to some real apps with desktop and mobile, right? Let's look at some stuff here. Close this folder. Let's look at CLI. Let's look at this one here. All right, so this is also a .NET MAUI app, but I'm trying to show you that web and native can actually live together very nicely. So in here, unlike Electron, I am not depending on, or I'm not shipping a browser. I'm not a Node.js app. I'm simply a .NET app. This one is still a .NET MAUI project which has some target frameworks. It has its own dependencies. This is how it shares the stuff, like your app icons. Everything is right down here, splash screens and so on. And then Maui program.cs essentially is a DI. Dependency injection is now built right in. So you plug in all of your service dependencies, and off you go with your app. Here we are bringing in a web view. This is essentially a smart abstraction to say, figure out where I'm running, give me the corresponding web view. It's going to be Chrome on Android. It's going to be WK Web View on Mac, or WebKit on iOS, and so on. Just give me a web view. That's all I want. And then I am old, so I'm very comfortable with XAML. I'm actually speaking about XAML at Star Trek, but XAML goes to a lot of places now. This gets verbose. I get it. You don't have to write it. If you hate XAML, this is all the XAML that you ever have to see. Just plug in one web view, and then your entire app is essentially a web app, including your navigation, including your styles, including your Blazor, Angular, all components. Everything is welcome. Because we're essentially pointing it to an index HTML and saying, go find this component. So if I go ahead and run this thing now, run that. So this is Maui with Blazor, essentially what's called Blazor Hybrid. But you can bring in other things as well. Because the Blazor Web View, even though it's called Blazor Web View, it's got nothing to do with Blazor. It doesn't care at all. You give it anything, it will run. So out comes the same Maui app, right? But this one's Blazor. You can kind of make out. So now no part of this UI is native. You can mix and match if you want a real native app, but this one is all Blazor. So if I go into the counter app, this is the same Blazor Hello World experience. To prove this is working, and again, I didn't pray to the demo gods, but let's try. Here, you're in Apple's walled garden. So this is my machine. Here's my app, and out comes your DevTools. So this is the web app. I can muck with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript all day long while my app is running on a Mac or an iOS or an iPad or an Android device, right? It is a web app, and it has access to all types of native things if you want it to, right? So web and native work out nicely together. Let me show you this in a better way so you get the point of how flexible this is. So let's look up another thing. I know I'm jumping through a lot of different things. I'm just trying to show you as many things as I can. This one here. How native can you get with Angular or Blazor on iOS? The answer is, it doesn't really matter. It's all .NET, so you can run anything you want. Here is the main page. All I have is a Blazor web view, but I have my Blazor components, my web stuff in a folder called pages. That's where also my CSS, my Sass, everything is welcome. I can just bring in all the stuff. Here's my root with favicons and index.html. It's a web app, right? However, I can do some very native things with this. Where am I running this? I don't want this to be on a Mac. Let's choose something else. Let's do an iPhone, like that. Any questions so far while this is spinning up? Any questions? Okay. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Sorry, I have a lot of questions.
Yeah, go for it.
I know that sometimes you run into issues with different browsers having treating CSS differently, just not all properties, but a couple of properties. With this, would you ever have an instance where the Blazor would look different on Linux versus Mac for the same app?
You could.
So
you could eventually, but hopefully we are beyond those jQuery browser battle days. It's not that blatant how different they are. Could be a few styles here and there.
But when you're doing the Blazor native app on the different things, is it all running on Blazor, so it should all look identical?
No.
Or they're actually running on a different...
It is still the browser that's rendering it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me show you this on an iPad Pro just to show you the same app. It just looks different. But this is all a Blazor app, but we can do some native things. The browser component is dependent on the platform that you're running it on. So if the browser is truly different, then you might have some things that are different. However, MAUI is going to try to help you out because it does have some basic styles built in where you're trying to build the next Facebook, so your app looks the same everywhere. So you'll get some of that benefits, but you might still have a couple of small differences. So here's a Blazor app running on an iPad, right? Just out of the gate. So if I tap on this button, it says, hey, that's your app name. You happen to be running on Portrait on this device. You happen to be on Wi-Fi. So it knows a lot of things. These are very, very native things, and it just knows out of the gate. Oops. Hold on. Let's go back in. And let's go into, oh, we are getting a crash. That's not fun. No, it's still up. Okay, counter, that still works. That's no fun at all. It is running. Okay, read from timestamp. Oh, I'm getting crashes all over the place because I updated my runtime as one does. But what I was trying to show you is, let's see if I can quickly show you this. There we go. So I'm trying to read geolocation from an app, and it prompts me with my iOS thing. I mean, the iOS permissions thing. Don't say you're going to stalk the user, but some very, very native .NET things are totally welcome to do from Angular, from Blazor, right? Because it's all .NET APIs that you're calling. So I can allow it once, and then I have the true lat-long geolocation. If I say, take a picture, this is deep from the simulator. I'm trying to tap into somebody's camera or their media library. I get an image that's also centered through CSS. So all of your web things are also welcome. You can reuse some of that stuff. Make sense? Yeah. Now this is just .NET and Blazor stuff, right? The other stuff works too. Let's close this stuff. Let's do 2 more demos and then we'll stop. I can go on all night long until Matt kicks me out. Where am I? Close this window. All right. Let's do one more. So if I go in here and say MAUI with Angular, you know where I'm going with this. So let's choose this one here. Not a Mac build. Let's go iPad 10th generation. That's fine. Let's go start. Can you bring in Angular, Vue, React into a desktop or a mobile app? Yes, again, we have done that for a long, long time. This is a little different because it's a little bit more lightweight. It uses a web view that is fairly smart in giving you the right browser and lets you reuse most of your styles and so on. So for anybody who does Angular, this will feel familiar. This is NG new Angular, except this one's running on an iPad, and I still get the screen dimensions. Those are native things. And I can tap on this button to say, you're running on, oh, except for the crashes, you're running on an iPad. Did it really crash? Let's do that again. I really need to get back and fix it up. So iPad 10th generation orientation portrait. So I'm calling .NET from JavaScript because all of that is doable. If I go look at the code here, here's what we're doing. All of that code lives here in my appxaml.cs. I am essentially decorating .NET functions with this thing called JS invocable, which makes them magically appear to JavaScript. It's like a wall in between. They don't like to talk to each other. You're supposed to bundle up whatever you want to call and throw it over the wall, and hopefully somebody catches it. But it's mostly fine because you're bringing in this thing called Interop, JavaScript Interop. This is baked into Blazor hybrid or MAUI hybrid. So JavaScript and .NET can very comfortably talk to each other. So that was TypeScript calling into these .NET functions, and it's just fine because now you're reaching into .NET APIs to give you the device info and the orientation and so on. Make sense a little bit? Yeah? Okay, I'm going to stop here because I don't want to keep you guys forever. Hopefully what you're able to see here is that we have a lot of power in our hands. So let's go change the world, right? We have a lot of tools that help us be more productive. Let's try to push a little bit of that productivity to the users. Use as much or as little of the AI that you want. But know that .NET is a very modern ecosystem with lots of benefits for your productivity, modern languages, modern runtimes, modern compilers, and lots of help for you to build both enterprise as well as personal apps of your own. No barrier to entry. It's very welcoming to all. So I'll stop with that, and thank you. Thank you so much. I'm here. I'm going to hang around here, so if you want to talk or see more stuff, I'm here.
Questions? Are you driving home tonight?
No, I'm old. I used to be doing that for years. I need to crash somewhere because I'm old.
How long a drive?
It's a 3.5 hour. So I live in Erie, Pennsylvania, which is called the Mistake on the Lake. There is no reason for you to stop unless you're out of gas or you need to charge. So I live in Erie.
Where's the whiteout?
Not this time of the year.
Not
Yeah,
this
it's
time of
nice.
year.
Yeah, I'm good for 10 months of the year. I'm beautiful. Yeah, well, always fun to come down here. So thank you, folks, for coming out and spending an hour and a half with us.
There's some pretty cool stuff in there, and so, some of that is like, you did what now? And then some of that's like, whoa, I had no idea you could do that. Yeah, that's awesome.
But semantic kernel, that's a whole other level.
Oh yes, it is.
Yeah.
The semantic kernel is a lot of fun.
Do you need to project?
No, I think I'll just hold it up for folks just to verify my trustworthiness here. We'll do our raffle, but I just want to make sure we don't have any questions for Sam first.